As we said, as we saw before, talking about exponential technologies, you can't not talk about speed. And change today is as fast as it never has been before, but at the same note, it will never be so slow as it is today. And exponential technologies emerge more and more in our today's businesses. And we will talk a little bit about, is there a exponential technology, or is it more a combination of different kind of exponential technologies which makes it exponential? And this brings me to the second attribute, which is important for the term or the definition of exponential technologies, which is that an exponential technology, some of them like drones are here already for a decade, but today there is the point where the ratio of the price for such technologies is possible to be introduced into our today's businesses. So this is a little bit a differentiator, and with that note, I would like you to introduce to the panel, and I would like you to do it like that I will kick off with a short question and like to ask every single participant on the panel to introduce yourself in a short note. And my first question is, it's a little bit weird to stand here and not to sit in the panel, but I can handle that. But my first question to you all is, so exponential technologies, how did it impact your life, perhaps your personal life and also your business life? Michael.
Thank you very much. So my name is Michael Bereswil. I'm leading the Data Analytics and AI group at Swisscom. And how did it impact my life? Actually, it helped me to not forget as many appointments as I did before. So it helps me to better manage my personal life and to make sure I stay connected with all the friends and the business peers that I very much value.
Wow.
Mark Gruber, Vice President for Innovation at EPFL, also a professor of technology entrepreneurship and an author of a book called Where to Play, which was just added to the Lean Startup Toolset by Steve Blank, so I encourage everyone to check it out. So that was my guerrilla marketing. I think AI touches us already everywhere in terms of cell phones, the apps we use, etc. So I think we live in a world where AI is pervasive, and we just don't realize it. It helps our life in many fronts.
Okay. Philip, you've got the mic. Perhaps you keep it. No, you can make a statement.
No, you can keep it because I'm hooked up. I think, well, today, I mean, one of our portfolio companies is in digital health, so I'm super excited about what we can do today already to diagnose health condition and really have a huge impact on that. That's already happening today. I just came out of a discussion with a few academics on what's happening in China around the infrastructure, and I think in 5 years from now, we'll really be able to walk through cities and have an avatar walk next to us and have a discussion with them, even though that person might be sleeping at that point or sit at a desk at a completely different location on the planet. And that will need a whole bunch of different things, like high-speed infrastructure, smart people building those applications. And I think from now to then, those are the types of things we'll see.
Okay.
My name is Detlef Günther. I'm Vice President Research and Corporate Relations at ETH Zurich. So if you ask me about my daily business, this is AI technology, because what you see are students using it, algorithm development, health science and data which we bring together. So that's really in the daily operation we're confronted with that. I must admit, in my private life, I try to be as analog as possible.
My name is Christian. I'm a partner with Early Bird Venture Capital. We're the largest German-based venture fund investing across Europe. And we somehow obviously invest in AI-based companies, although we say we don't invest in AI companies because you can't do anything with AI. AI has to have a meaning, has to basically be base for a good business model. And this is exactly why I like it so much, why I think it has a huge impact also for Europe, now thinking really about Europe, because 10 years ago, we haven't seen many unicorns in Europe, I must say. There were a few. Now, last year, we had 17. China had 20. The US had 50. Still more, but we're on a good track here. And I think part of this is because we are more focusing on technology, AI being part of it, a big part of it, and other technologies. We come to this probably. And as of now, the most valuable AI company globally comes from Europe, not from Germany, not from Switzerland, unfortunately, but from Romania. And it's not just the most valuable AI company, it's also the fastest growing software company ever. So we believe, and that's why we invest in Europe, we believe it's possible here. We just need to do it. And based on these technologies which we have here, and where we have, I think, a very good, deep understanding and very good research institute, universities. So I think we just need to do more of it, and it's possible, as we see with those examples.
Thank you. We will tackle this point about geographies a little bit later on, but I would like to stick a little bit about more exponential technologies. So we talked a lot about AI yet. As I mentioned in my introduction, that perhaps other exponential technologies or the combination of those will have the biggest impact on our future exponential businesses. So perhaps question towards the universities, EPFL or ETH. What is your focus on your research? What other exponential technologies do you see beside AI?
Well, one technology develops another one, and what we see in all the AI developments, but also the algorithms and the big data, we see clearly that the next breakthrough will be quantum computing, and this is a very clear focus. Now everyone tries to claim it, but you know, we started 20 years ago almost investing in this field, and you see it's coming closer and closer, and the developments are getting more serious. Of course, we are not there yet. We have not this, 1 million qubits error corrected to really tackle the major challenges in of our future. But the step is necessary, and I see actually it's on the horizon. I would say within the next 10 years we sit here, we will see more and more, because it's not a single entity working on it, it is globally. And the second, where I see a significant impact, it's not so much the amount of data, it's the quality of data. And we can really see that Switzerland, with quality of data, can make a huge impact. We see it at the moment in health science, very significant, because you have to combine the data logically, and you have to acquire them after certain protocols and stack them properly. And here we see the distributed storage of data, as you said it, will increase somehow also security, and the logic combination of those data. That is our next challenge, and I'm fairly sure we are on a track in Switzerland.
For EPFL, just adding to this, I think we were well aligned among many of these topics. What we have strengthened in the past 2 years was our work in blockchain with the Center for Digital Trust, where we work closely with industry, bring industry players to EPFL to develop with us everything from e-voting tools toward more secure supply chains. And I think this is truly an area where Switzerland can be extremely strong. What is not so well known is that both ETHs and our computer science departments are ranked up there. We are at EPFL, we are number 8 in the world in terms of our computer science department. I think that's great for the country to have these types of competences over here, and that can be combined then with deep tech and other types of technologies to make it even more powerful.
Okay, now in this area of rapidly accelerating transformation, companies of all kinds must adapt to this pace of innovation. And perhaps a question for you, Michael. How do you adapt such research from universities at Swisscom?
Well, that's actually a very good question. I think the game really changed. I mean, 2 things have really evolved over the last 2 years. For example, if I look at the field of AI, 2 to 3 years ago, a lot of companies like us, we were doing POCs. We had the first really talents coming in from EPFL, from ETH. And now, over the last 2 to 3 years, everything professionalized. So it's now in the processes, it scales, it's in every customer experience, so this is one. And then number 2 is that a company really has to invest in the ecosystem. I mean, back in the days, it was just like you give a school money to do research, and then you wait for the report 12 months later. And now we have such strong relationships, for example, with EPFL, where our people collaborate every single day. So the way that companies should work with research completely changed thanks to players like EPFL and companies who are open enough to do it.
Now, we've got the telecom provider, perhaps who isn't a telecom just only provider anymore, but it's broader.
It's telecom IT.
Yeah. Universities, you both work in venture capital. What's your perspective? How do you see that? Is this ecosystem Michael was talking about, do you see this happening as well in your corporates, in your ventures?
Yeah, no, it's definitely happening. I mean, we always look for we're a little bit more close. We also see obviously quantum coming up and other things. We always look as a venture capitalist to invest in something which can be at least monetized or can ramp a business model sooner or later, rather sooner than later. So that's what we focus on, and we see in terms of what's happening. We see edge computing coming. Well, quantum is a long-term thing. It's hard to invest as a venture capital in quantum technologies now, but edge we see becoming more and more important, especially for those reasons like you have more IoT devices, we have 5G coming, you need more intelligence on devices basically to make them secure and so on. So this is something we see coming. We see blockchain, and we look for blockchain applications. We still have the real only applications we have now is the cryptocurrencies. There are not many other applications, but we see this coming. So in terms of what the next step is, we see a lot of potential there with first blockchain applications coming. We believe in basically in a tokenized world, so assets will be tokenized. The first assets becoming tokenized are probably all the virtual things, so like in fintech, all products, all loans, everything, all bonds, everything will be tokenized. That's probably the first step we see coming soon. So just a couple of examples where we see potential investment opportunities.
Let's boil it down a little bit. I mean, we saw in your slides, I think you quoted Amara saying that we overestimate the potential of technologies on the short term and underestimate it on the long term. Now, we are talking about blockchain, about AI, ever since. We are talking since years about that. So where does it impact us today? Us here in Switzerland as a personal and also as corporates. Bring us a few examples. Who's first? And afterwards, I will hand over to you because you have to think about the next after, because you are sitting in Silicon Valley. So what's coming next?
Just a very practical example. We invested in a company called Frogster. They do fraud detection in payments. With this, they reduce the fraud rates in payment. And it's very complicated. It has to be AI-based because obviously the fraudsters are coming with new ideas and you can't tackle this with a rule-based system. This is doing both things, reducing fraud in payments, which reduces the cost basically for anyone who's paying and payment cost. So that's a practical AI, and you can see that these fraudsters, the more they learn, the lower get. That's a practical example. More from the B2B side, not from the consumer side in this case, but it's a B2B example which is working perfectly, and it's applied AI.
May I ask for some practical examples from the university as well? Because I know there are some.
When I studied, we had these big course books, and I was standing in front of little windows and try to understand which courses I take. And nowadays, what the students can do is we have an AI algorithm behind all of this. We know which student chose what course. So when you are a student, you can log in and see what your colleagues have taken and what type of courses fit together. So it's a very different way of picking your studies, and I think this is just the beginning, because then we can add further on the employment data of these people, try to understand, so we're trying to compete a bit with LinkedIn.
So next step is you'll send your avatar.
Yeah.
There are actually 1,000 use cases that we could mention. I mean, one that I like very much is that affects everybody of us is connectivity. I mean, we use large-scale, high-performance computing infrastructure to understand what's the coverage, how many people are using or doing a phone call right now, and then do, based on machine learning algorithms or AI-based applications, capacity planning, or how we built the network. So it's affecting us every single day as we speak.
One example is Singapore is a very close, dense city, and in the city center you have 6-degree higher temperatures than in the surroundings. So cooling Singapore has a huge impact on the health of people and population there. Now, if you consider the complexity of parameters You have to consider which is transfer of data from every cab driver, from every cooling and heating system within town. You can combine it, but nobody else than using algorithms can really understand and help to lower the temperature in town. This is AI application. And we are talking sometimes like it's something which arrived today. Our students are very familiar with them. They are using these algorithms in a lot of application. If you look at PSI, their entire Swiss file, the switching of the certain instruments and this logic is done with artificial intelligence and saves 20% of energy already. I mean, these grid studies in Europe, you could never, provide the energy logically distributed in the way we are doing it, and also with savings without using these algorithms. But we are misleading in our artificial intelligence, because we should somehow more focus on this augmented intelligence or machine learning, because a lot of things which we are underlaying there are algorithms. So it's a learning process, and if we really talk artificial intelligence, then we have to look down 10 years the line, because we're not close, and Philip showed that very nicely. Okay, you have the human intelligence combined with the computer and then augmented intelligence, and then you can bring it at one point. So the scaring part is always people think too fast, wow, are we taking over? No, we are enhancing our own capabilities and then make logic decisions.
Philip, you are operating out of Silicon Valley. 2 questions. Why not Switzerland? But now that you are already there, what's behind the curtains? What do we don't know here about what you are talking? What's the next big thing in Silicon Valley?
Well, first of all, my partner spent a lot of time in Switzerland because we were building a bridge with other of our partner funds who are also in the room, this bridge between Silicon Valley and Switzerland. I hear a lot, we need to replicate Silicon Valley in Switzerland, which doesn't make a lot of sense because you cannot. Silicon Valley has a very specific history, and Switzerland has a very specific one. Actually, you could argue that Switzerland's history is the reason why Crypto Valley happened and why a lot of blockchain things are happening here, because we have a huge appreciation for distributed decision making, right? And so has Singapore has a different history, so it doesn't make sense to try to replicate each other. Actually, what we focus on for the last, actually since I moved there 18 years ago, is how can we combine the positive things and make 1 + 1 = 5, right? I think that's a very important thing to think about. And with companies we invested in, like Beekeeper, like in the early days, that's what we try to do from day one. Like, how can we build an international company from day one? Because the US companies are born in Silicon Valley, often just focus on the US. And actually, we have a huge advantage here because we're multi-language, multi-problems, GDPR, doesn't even register yet in the US, right? So GDPR often also is explained to me as a disadvantage against other ecosystems. I think it's a huge advantage because if you believe in this data pendulum coming back, which we do, okay, you might be thinking something different. If you believe in that, you have to believe that we have to be much more careful around our personal data. Eventually, we'll be regulated. If you start a company out of an environment that is at the frontier of that, which GDPR I think is a great thing, then you win because you build a company that already bakes that into the DNA of the company. And so instead of just throwing more use cases on what I see there, I think there's clearly that. So think about what is the competitive advantage of Switzerland, and let's use that and combine it with the other ecosystems and build big successful companies who not just make a lot of money, there's a lot of unicorn talk, but also have a huge impact on the planet, on people, because once you start with a use case in mind that impacts a lot of people, you automatically will build a valuable company. That's one thing. Then on Amara's law, I feel like it's really interesting, and that's a little bit I can talk about because I'm Swiss and now like half American. But Amara's law in Switzerland is often, the interpretation of it is, we bought into this hype cycle and now I told you so, it crashed. So now let's not do it anymore, right? Silicon Valley is very different. They're like, okay, everybody puts money into a pot to learn, and then it crashes, and now the real journey starts. Because now we spent money on education, everybody, like there were a lot, in every hype cycle, a lot of people come in, entrepreneurs who shouldn't really be entrepreneurs, there's a lot of like silly companies being started. actually, right at the crash, at the end of the crash, Silicon Valley starts to invest heavily in like the really good ideas. So I can totally, I probably would sign it here. In 10 years from now, we'll look back to 2019 and say, wow, the real strong companies in blockchain were born in between 2019, 20, 21, you name it, right? Because now we crashed, and we have a huge advantage in Switzerland. We went through a lot of experiences that other countries did and other entrepreneurs didn't go through, and so we shouldn't just let it go. We should actually now, we actually as a fund start to invest in it heavily because we feel that's the long term and it's here to stay. The other thing, sorry, one more point. I also feel like in terms of universities, what we see a big opportunity around data to bring multiple disciplines together, like computer science with all the other departments, and help think about completely different stuff. And I think universities need to do a better job in bringing all these departments together and collaborate more. And we as investors need to do it, and entrepreneurs need to do it, and everybody in the room needs to do it, because the really big impact use cases we'll discover when we talk to people that we never talked to. And
even to your competitors, perhaps, something where you will talk to.
That's right.
I want to pick up two things which you mentioned, and the one is the crash. And well, in Switzerland, literally, some of the drones, which were quite innovative, crashed recently, and the only thing the Swiss newspapers had to tell is about the crash. They didn't tell about the learnings. Perhaps this is a little bit differentiated as well. And thinking about that, the Red Flag Act of UK comes into my mind, saying in 1860, when the first electric car without horses was introduced and had a small crash with a pedestrian, there was a law saying that the man with a red flag had to walk in front of every such car to show about the danger. And now talking about regulation, talking about Switzerland, and we have a little bit to talk about 5G as well, because I see 5G as one of those exponential technologies for sure as well. Now, is this regulation we have today in Switzerland again a kind of a red flag act, or how can we move this Silicon Valley thinking into our Swiss corporates as well? Whoever. I learned that you are not the spokesman for 5G, so despite. But
I don't think that we have a red flag, but we have some examples. I mean, if you take one example from the Silicon Valley, Theranos, then we have a very good reason actually for being cautious in certain points, and there are red lines which we should not go under. 5G makes a lot of noise because of the political situation, but if you really look behind the curtain, we're working on 6G already, and we are, advanced. The discussion about health issues at the moment now, I think we could solve the problem technologically in a way by focusing the beams in a different way. Switzerland has a very good position actually in supporting the regulations and also in the ethics. If you think about Philip's first slide, this is definitely something where customers pay attention in the future, and that's the reason why these huge data tanks will not be, sustainable. Cybersecurity, cyber war is a huge issue. Medical data, etc. So that's the reason why I think actually don't look too strange at these red flags. We don't have a lot. Shape from the technological side, the political, and support them, help them actually to put some regulations in place which help us in the long term. If you mentioned these drone events, I remember that we had an exhibition in China. We showed one video, and we've been very proud that one drone was flying in Switzerland. The next speaker showed hundreds of drones flying in certain areas there, okay? So we adapt it carefully. We use it where it's useful, sometimes a little bit too slow. People would like to see it faster, but I think we're on a good track. We definitely have no red flag.
With regard to regulation, and not coming from Switzerland here, but obviously with Crypto Valley, you showed that you can remove something. I mean, this was probably due to regulation somehow, that it existed, or it has developed. If I see that 5G is being auctioned in Germany. It's totally stupid. It should be free, basically, to everyone. So to make use and push it forward. So that's stupid. So I think you can move a lot of things with regulation if you change regulation. That's possible. And I see in some cases that 5G example that basically things are not pushed forward, especially with 5G, where I don't see any near-term applications. I see use cases, but not real in terms of applications, because there's so many issues to be solved. And we as an individual, we don't care, because we can write emails, we can talk with the phone. There's no need basically for high bandwidth. So where are the applications? There are some, but not very obvious. So that's why it can be obviously pushed if being basically given away for free, but just one point of how regulation could be changed.
I think there's another angle that's quite important to this whole discussion, and which is communication vis-à-vis the population. Because when you think about technological progress, we as human beings have never seen so many technological disruptions happening at the same time. Think of everything from AI, blockchain, drones, etc. And I think the population, in some sense, might be overwhelmed with what's happening, and there's a lot of insecurity. And then when you have a topic like 5G, it tends to swing towards the skepticism side and the worry side and the concerns, because people have seen other things that might lose jobs, and the health issues, they are overplayed. But it's about us communicating better and make people dream again what technology can do. If you think about global warming, innovation is something where we can have a lot of impact on helping reduce global warming. So I think framing technology in a more positive sense, make people dream, have optimism in what we can actually accomplish. I think that's a big challenge and a big task for universities, but everyone involved in the technology sector in Switzerland to do as well.
Yeah, and I actually think this is happening here at this conference. I mean, as a consumer or as a participant in this conference, I can really say I walk through the floors, I see companies that want to process huge amounts of data, that want to share huge amounts of data, that want to have distributed systems that process data for different use cases. And how is this possible when we have the fastest connection, when we have a fast connection everywhere that we go? So I think what you just said, we have to see technology in a more positive way that is actually enabling the business of tomorrow. So for me, seeing all these people and this company here provides me actually with the answer to your question.
Yeah. Well, it does. I also see that exponential technologies amplifies perhaps the both extremes. On the one side, the positive extremes, but on the other side, the negative extremes as well. It moves a little bit away from the average. And I think the whole topic around data and data privacy is perhaps another panel on its own. And therefore, I would like to skip it and have to come to an end. And I would like to tackle you a little bit because intelligence is hitting a target that nobody else can. Genius is hitting a target that nobody else can see. And so with this question, I would like you to ask as a final round now for each of you, if you had to found a startup today, based on what technology would you found it? What is the next thing to come? And I'm asking about the geniuses within you. And perhaps we can go around.
What is so difficult to say for me? I mean, what I want to see as a consumer is that everything that I consume in terms of streaming and TV, it's endless. If there's something that helps me to navigate through this chaos of entertainment possibilities, to really find the one movie that I want to watch tonight with my wife, I mean, I would totally go for this.
I wouldn't have any particular preference for if it's blockchain, AI, or whatnot, but more in the application areas, the opportunities that they actually create, because that's another completely different angle. What can the entrepreneurs see, what they could do with technology? And I think the application, the use case, the size of the market, that will then decide what I do.
I mean, I don't want to call it blockchain. I would definitely play around with decentralized systems and focus on topics like identity. And that's just my personal passion about. I feel like there is a huge opportunity there, whatever that is. Whatever our identity will be going forward in the physical world, but also in the digital world. And combined with that, associated with that is cybersecurity, because how do we increase cybersecurity? Do we get to limits with the current architectures we have? So that triangle of opportunities I feel super interesting, and the most interesting entrepreneurs I run into have very interesting backgrounds, to say the least, and most often they're not able to talk about it. But there's definitely a lot of thinking going into that. And that's what I think where we'll see in 10 years, looking back, that some of these companies will have been basically started in the next few years, or might have been started already.
One of my best research ideas we licensed because I had too many duties and could not found a company. Now, I hope that you're not shocked if I say what I would do. I feel guilty when I take my old car because fuel consumption, some of the cities are not reachable anymore. So I would open up a company which transfers old-timer into electromobility so that we maintain, the smell of the 60s, the beautiful, but more sustainable for the future.
That's awesome.
The rebel.
I think the best you could do is keep your old car and drive with this and don't buy a new one. So what I would probably also do something in the blockchain space, basically, with regard to data privacy, basically to give people back the data privacy. That would be one thing if it would be in the digital world, if it would be, well, maybe it can be combined, but I think clean tech is something where I think we see a next wave of clean tech. We've seen a wave of clean tech which has not been successful. Kleiner Perkins went down with this first wave. I think we see a next wave, and it needs to be tackled, and probably AI and blockchain can also help making maybe the next wave successful. So maybe I should focus on that one.
Well, let's take this wave picture, and we want to ride above the wave and not be the one, be buried below it. We learned that with Crypto Valley we already did a lot. We learned that with an ecosystem, with collaboration, with international thinking, we can achieve a lot. And we learned we don't have to be Silicon Valley. We have to earn our Swiss values. We have to take our Swiss values and put it together with this risk-taking approach. And I'm sure we will be successful. Thank you very much for this panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for